Thanks for joining us again. Little AVID Chat. David Harpool and Jack Arnold here. Good to see you, Jackson.
Good to see you again.
So one thing that's been coming up a lot lately is the whole discussion or thought behind, should I refinance my house? Historically, rates are the lowest we've ever seen. I feel like it's been probably 5 years now that we've been hearing rates are going to go up, rates are going to go up, rates are going to go up. Yeah, they've been going down, actually. I think they're even down over the last week, which is kind of random. So we thought it'd be a good time to just take some time here and address that question, leave you some points to ponder or think about, and go from there. So what do you think is driving the whole thing? Is it merely the rates, or is there something else you think that drives that thought process?
Well, what is today? September
22nd.
2020. So, keep that in mind if you're watching this. So it's September 22nd of 2020. I think what normally drives some of the should I, shouldn't I is basically just interest rates are lower equals refinance. And there's a lot of, maybe you would call it information, maybe it's more propaganda from people who sell mortgages, and that it's just a simple decision. Interest rates are lower, therefore refinance. And it's not as like a equals B type decision. There's a lot of things that will go into if it's beneficial for you or not. And if you should or should not do it more, does it match up with what you're trying to accomplish? I think that's a thing. Like with most things, what should drive the decision making is, what am I trying to accomplish? Does it get me closer or does it get me further away? So I think what drives it is, like I said, it's interest rates are lower, therefore refinance. You're inundated with that as an idea, and you think, well, I just should, and then you just do it, and without thinking through some of the
it's all over the place. We have friends are talking about it, neighbors are doing it. I think that's the one thing in finances that people are okay sharing with one another for some random reason. We don't talk about how much we make and what we're spending on or saving per se, but when it comes to just my mortgage is 30-year and it's 3.5%. What's yours? That's just, it's okay to do that. Yeah. So I think that plays a role too.
That's a great point. We will never talk with anybody about our finances for the most part. Most people have no idea. We use like shorthand, like, what is this person buying? That is like an idea of what they're doing financially. But you're right. People will openly talk about refinancing their house and their interest rate and all this, that's interesting to even think about. So, yes, very out of the way.
So where we would suggest you start is really, what is why are you addressing this? So is it just you're hearing about it, there's buzz about it, so I might as well. But then also, what's the plan? I think the biggest thing that we need to think about if you're a homeowner listening is, what is your plan for your home? Meaning, you plan on staying there for 15, 20, 30 years. You're not really happy and you're going to outgrow the space because kids are getting bigger. You might have an opportunity to change your career, job, and relocate, because those things also are going to play a role as to, should I really be exploring the refinance? Is the timing right? You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, so, all those individual circumstances those are like first and foremost. How long reasonably will I be in this house? What are my objectives? Ultimately, refinancing a house is borrowing money. There's just no two ways about it. You are borrowing money, oftentimes to pay off a previous mortgage, but you're definitely borrowing money. What are you going to do with that borrowed money, and how is that going to impact your future going forward? If it's I'm trying to build wealth because I want to have some independence in the future. Well, then if you're borrowing money, like a cash out refi thing where you're just borrowing more money to buy things, well, it's almost certainly getting you further away, only because now you've just taken on more debt, albeit cheaper debt, but more debt all the same. You just owe more money. You've just taken consumption from the future and pulled it into the present. You're certainly not any closer than you were yesterday just by refining your mortgage and having a lower monthly payment. You just not. Now, if you take the difference in the payment, let's say you have a 30-year mortgage, you have 25 years left on it. Let's say you've had it for 5 years, you refinance it, make it 30, and now you have this lump sum of cash that you take out and you use that for something that would build your wealth. Like you have 20% credit cards, or you have some 9% student loans or something like that. You could make the case that gets you a little bit closer. Maybe not ideal, you're still borrowing money, but better than having something that's 10% or 20%, otherwise.
Right. I totally agree. So it really is, what's the plan for the house? And I would say the longevity to where you stay there, when you start to look at the math, which we'll maybe talk about here at the end, typically what I've seen, this is my own personal refinance decisions, as well as helping clients through this, is normally the cost, because let's face it, it's not a free thing. Mm-hmm. Between the cost and, you have to put money back in for your prepaid escrow, which is a big thing. It might be a 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8 year break even to that cost. So if your plans are, well, in 3 years, kids are out of the house and we're going to downsize because we don't need all this space and blah, 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 it might not make sense from that standpoint.
Right.
If you're on the other side of it, I'll use myself as a recent example. I don't plan on going anywhere for the next 15, 20 years, maybe longer. I feel like we're pretty content. Anything could happen. So that's a good starting point. So, okay, I'm going to be here for a while. The cost of the transaction, I'll recoup up over time, but not until, let's say, 5 years from now.
Right. So, well, you kind of went through the thought process of, do I refi my mortgage, or do I simply just pay more on my current one and avoid, whatever the closing cost is? What if I just took the closing cost that I would otherwise pay, put it on my mortgage, and then just pay extra on top of it? So I don't know. How did you kind of come to the conclusion on what you wanted to do?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think where we started was I had a 30-year. I was 5 years into a 30-year that I had at 4.75. Rates were around 3.25. This was earlier this year for 30 years. So I started doing the math. I did an amortization schedule, which I would say is underutilized in the process. Normally you don't see that at all until closing, and they show you the interest you would pay over the life of the loan. You're taking out 180, but it costs you 260. And you're like, oh, well, whatever, it's a house. And you just, you blow by it. So ahead of time, I did the amortization schedule, which for AVID clients, we have one. This is a fun thing to kind of, well, fun for me, but something you could play around with. And basically what it came out to was, if I did a same 30-year at a better rate, about 1.25%, 1.5% better, I would have saved some money. But if I would have just added that additional money into the current loan, I would have ended up still paying more.
Oh, true.
If that makes sense. So the refinance was still a better bet, even though it cost me, let's call it $8,000, 6 or so, to refinance the whole thing, because there was such a drastic reduction in rate.
Right. But you didn't get another 30.
But no, so I didn't. So I was, as I said, that was the starting part. Okay. So then I started thinking, all right, well, it makes sense to refinance, but what would it be like? Because I know typically rates on a shorter term, because you're going to pay it off quicker, are better. So I then explored a 15. And at the time, 15-year mortgage was 2.65%. So I went back to the amortization schedule and said, all right, what does this look like? And what it boiled down to was, if I went from let's say 25 years left on my 30, or going to a 15, all costs in, it cost me about $250 more per month. But one, I'll pay the mortgage off 10 years sooner, and it'll save about $120,000 in interest. So then it came, all right, what are we trying to accomplish? We went back to, are we going to be here for 10 or 15 years? Because if the answer to that is no, then this thought process doesn't make sense. The answer was yes, we're going to. We have Clayton 6, Lucilia's almost 4. We don't plan on going anywhere. So if we could, our cash flow allows an extra couple $100 a month. We shave 10 years of a payment. $100,000+ of interest over the life of it and puts us in a position for our future self, this being the rationale, I have one less obligation.
Yeah, true.
I still have taxes, still have insurance, still have maintenance, all that stuff you have as a homeowner. But I won't have the $1,500 mortgage. So we ended up doing that. That's what we did. We ended up, in fact, we just closed on it, 15-year 2.65. But there's the two sides were how long, why, what's the main purpose, and then does the math make sense? For me, the math made sense.
Right. So, but you got a shorter term, better rate, a little bit more on the monthly payment, but you had the cash flow to pay the extra monthly payment, right?
Have the cash flow to pay the extra payment. And I will say this, because we had current cash committed for other things. We'd already set cash aside for these future things that we've been working towards. I didn't have an additional money for the closing costs. So that too is a variable. So the loan, in essence, this is going to sound counterproductive. I added more to my loan,
right?
The closing costs. So I didn't have to come out of pocket. But still, even though that's added in there, and I think it affected my payment probably like $20, $30 a month, the interest savings was still a no-brainer when it came to comparing to where I currently was.
Right. So it's kind of like, if you're going through, I think what you can do first is it's almost like you can tick off some basic, like high-level ideas first. So you can say, first of all, what am I going to do? Why am I even going to refinance my house? If the answer is because I want to build some wealth and I think that refinancing will help me do that, then you can go into the refinance. If the other version is, well, I want to refinance so I can spend some more money because I want to buy something, then listen, that's fine too. You just have to know that you're just borrowing money to spend money, which puts if you're trying to be independent, build some wealth, you're further away from that, which isn't good or bad necessarily. It's just understanding that's what you're doing. But if you're trying to build wealth, I think it's a matter of, do I want to build wealth? The answer is yes. Okay, well, how can I do that? Do I need, I would always say that if you started with a 30 and it's down to 25, let's say, the apples is almost, well, what does a 25-year mortgage cost me? Unfortunately, a few places do 25 or 23 or 28-year mortgages. So you kind of have to ballpark it. Maybe you can get a 25. Mostly it's like 30, maybe 20, but usually 30 and 15 are the most. So it's kind of, do I want to build wealth? What's my cash flow? Which is always, like I've said in the past, that's the basics. Do I have the money to make the extra payment? If I have money to make a higher payment, how much do I have? If I have $100 more, I need to keep that in mind because I don't want to refinance to a 15-year, let's say. It's $300 more a month, but all of a sudden I start putting money on a credit card because I don't have the money to do it.
Yeah.
Kind of shoot yourself in the foot.
Absolutely.
So building wealth, yes. What's my budget? Do I have the extra cash? Can I do that? Yes, no. And then you're just kind of working through the big ideas and maybe just narrowing down to, okay, let me put these things side by side and use some kind of AM schedule to figure out what makes the most sense. And am I getting a good deal? Should I throw in the closing call? Should I not? What are these kinds of things?
Yeah.
You kind of drill down.
And I think two things that just came to mind, especially in this environment, we're staying at home more. We're noticing things in the house that we like, don't like. Remodelings, at least on my street, there's stuff going on. People are adding things, changing things. So one, maybe there is a need to access some of the equity that you might be fortunate to have to help, I don't want to say improve or make your house worth more, but have it keep up with market value. So then in the future, it is continuing to be worth something of value. Right. The other thing too that's important, that we're different, right? So yeah. I may view debt and a mortgage completely different than you do, Jack. Right. Where you might say, well, 2.65, like why would I don't want to pay that off any sooner, because if I invest long term and let's just say I can get 5 or 6%, well, that makes more sense. And then I would say, well, that's a difference between you and me, the way we view things. And I'm not picking on you because that's what you think. But at the end of the day, that might be enough for you to say, well, I'm good. If I have a different additional cash flow, I'm going to save it. I'm going to do something else with it.
Yeah. Well, right. There's always it's easy to say, I'll make these very cold, rational, mathematics-based decisions, but things just don't work like that sometimes. So you may say, almost in an irrational, anti-math type of way, I just want to pay the thing off because I just want to be done with it. And if that means that I have to pay $100 more, but if I can refinance and make it 15 and I can get it, all the better. I know that I'm not using my money in the optimal way, theoretically, but I'm good with that. I just want to have the thing paid off because, like you said, it's just one less thing that I'm committed to. And then I actually do own a house. I'm not a mortgage haver. I'm a real homeowner. I own this thing. That's like definitely a milestone to reach. No question.
Yep. I think it's definitely helpful. I want to share one thing for those of you watching this, that if you're even contemplating the idea, we do have a quick little cheat sheet, if you will. This is a pretty busy screen, so I'm not going to go through it in detail, but it will walk you through, start here. Should I refinance? And some of these things we've talked about, you can kind of navigate through the yeses and nos, and it'll take you to other scenarios. And then at the end of it, you might come with a, you know what, this doesn't make sense. We're gonna relocate in 3 years anyway, so why bother? Or you get to the end of this thing, it's yes, okay, this is something that I need to really put more meat onto the bones. I'm going to reach out to AVID. That's what we're here for. We can work through an amortization schedule, talk more about the whys you're trying to accomplish it, and go from there. So we'll get that over to you as a resource. I think there's been a good, quick discussion. You have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I would say the only closing thought is, like, even with the flow chart, those are very rational, yes, no, flow chart type decisions. The rationale for why you're doing something or why you're not doing something doesn't always work within the flow chart. So if there's something else that's pulling you in a different direction, or you have some other kind of goal and you just want to walk it through, it's invaluable to have somebody to walk through that with you that would kind of tell you honestly, this is, what you're saying equals what you're trying to accomplish. So whether that's us or somebody else, I would encourage getting a second opinion, somebody who doesn't have any skin in the game, doesn't have a dog in the fight, whether you refinance or not. Like, don't ask your mortgage broker. Like, ask somebody that just they have no kind of benefit or detriment, whether you do it or not, just to help you work through some of the rationale. Because the spreadsheet will help with kind of the cold yes, no, the math-based solutions, but it's not going to help with the, kind of the softer factors is what, like right. I said, paying off the house, not paying off the house, that kind of thing. So.
Yep, exactly. Good point. Well, from both of us here at AVID Advisor Investment Group, I'm David Harpool. Jack, always good to talk about fun stuff like this with you.
All right.
We'll see y'all later.